Oh, wait, what about that girl from accounting? Laura?
Lillian.
Is Black Widow truly dead? I don't know. The whole concept of throwing yourself off a cliff to retrieve a soul stone kinda makes it sound like there's some wiggle room in regards to where Natasha's soul could be. Like, could her soul be out there using her wild martial arts skills, taking down other souls with her signature leg attack thing? Today's list is all about Black Widow and the questions we still need answered. Let's get into it, right now.
Just like Budapest all over again!
You and I remember Budapest very differently.
If there's one question about Black Widow that fans probably want answered more than anything, it's what exactly happened in Budapest. It started off as a joke. In the final battle in the Avengers, while Black Widow and Hawkeye are mowing down alien invaders, Natasha quips about how this is just like Budapest all over again, to which Hawkeye responds, "You and I remember Budapest very differently." From there, the joke grew into one of the franchise's most intriguing mysteries, with fans left wondering just what exactly went down in that mission to make Black Widow recall that information. Do we absolutely need an answer to this question? You know, probably not. It's not going to change anything going forward, but why I think this question deserves an answer is because it could bring things full circle. Whatever happened in Budapest was probably a much earlier mission for Black Widow, and knowing she's gone in the MCU, it could provide some closure for a character whose arc is most likely done. Plus, on the other side of things, don't you want to see why a rampaging horde of aliens reminded Natasha of that mission in the first place? At the end of Captain America: Civil War, Captain America set out to form his own nomad team, and then in Avengers: Infinity War, we see him working with Falcon and Black Widow. But it's clear that Black Widow didn't join up with Steve at first. She went off to do her own thing for a while. Her prequel movie takes place between the events of Civil War and Infinity War, and promises to give her her own spectacular solo adventure. But this leaves the question of when exactly does she meet back up with Cap, and what causes her to do this? Will Black Widow have learned that she wants to be a part of Cap's new team by the end of the solo movie and give him a call to join? Or will the door be left open so they can squeeze in another solo movie within the timeline and have her meet up with Cap at a later date? That's a big question. The themes from the Black Widow trailers we've seen are all about family. The movie seems to follow Black Widow as she reconnects with her past and her surrogate family, but now after looking at their team fight together in the upcoming movie, the big question now is, what happens to them? It's not like she called on Red Guardian or Yelena to fight alongside her in Avengers: Infinity War or Endgame, but why wouldn't she? Her whole surrogate family seems like they'd want to get in on the action to save the Earth from destruction, but obviously they didn't show up. There's two possibilities for this. The first is that Yelena, Melina, and Red Guardian all die by the end of the movie, but that's not likely given that Yelena is popping up in Hawkeye's series. But that doesn't necessarily mean Red Guardian and Melina make it out alive. The other option is that they're all busy on a separate mission that will be explored at a later date. Hawkeye and Black Widow have one of the best relationships in the MCU. They're true partners who love and respect one another. They'll always have each other's back, but us MCU fans have always wondered just how their relationship got so strong. We know the general gist of the story. Black Widow was bad for a while, and S.H.I.E.L.D. sent Hawkeye to kill her. But as Natasha puts it, Clint made a different call. He saw that she was actually a hero working under some bad circumstances, and pushed for her recruitment to S.H.I.E.L.D. But that's all incredibly vague. How exactly did that go down? Was Hawkeye tracking Black Widow for a few days and saw her rescue a kitten from a tree and knew she was good? Did their first meeting result in an epic beatdown brawl that ended with one of them gaining the upper hand? There's just so many question marks surrounding their first interaction. In a perfect world, I would love to see the Black Widow movie flashback to their fateful first meeting, so let's hope there's space for that. It would give their relationship even more context, and it would even be more fulfilling knowing how things end up. There's so much of Natasha's life that's still a mystery, but I am just dying to know what her early days in S.H.I.E.L.D. were like. Because think about it, it probably wasn't an easy transition. She was one of the top assassins in the world. And after her recruitment to S.H.I.E.L.D., you think everyone at the organization was all rainbows and butterflies about her joining their side? She probably faced a lot of backlash and grief from everyone around her. How much did Nick Fury trust her with missions, and how exactly did she prove herself to be a valuable asset to her new home? Plus, were there any repercussions from the Red Room? Did they try to send assassins after her to eliminate her? See, this is why a true prequel of Black Widow, showing us her early days at S.H.I.E.L.D., rather than just the time during Civil War and Infinity War, might have been better.
So what do you think? Should I fight this or run with it?
We know that as a young girl, Natasha was basically taken to the Red Room and turned into the super assassin we know today. But what were the circumstances around her real family? There's an interesting line in Endgame where Spooky Red Skull mentions that her father's name is Ivan Romanoff, but she reveals to Hawkeye that she didn't know that was the name of her father. I've always felt this was a strange moment. Was Black Widow telling Hawkeye that she didn't know her father's name until that moment, or that she just found out relatively recently that her father's name was Ivan? If it was the latter, then that seems like setup for the Black Widow prequel movie where she'll learn more about her past. But if she truly didn't know who her father was before Spooky Red Skull told her, then that means the question about her original family might not be addressed in the upcoming movie. And how does that info fit into the deleted scene in Captain America Civil War, where we hear Natasha talking about visiting her parents' gravestones? Is that still canon? Is it safe to say that Black Widow was probably mishandled the most in Avengers Age of Ultron? After kicking major butt in the Avengers, it felt like Joss Whedon didn't quite know where to take the character, and for the sequel shoehorned in a romance with Bruce Banner in order to give Hulk's decision to leave at the end of the movie more weight. But maybe that's a little harsh. There was a kernel of a good idea within their romance about Natasha finding a kindred spirit in Bruce because they both felt like monsters, but that relationship just didn't get off the ground in a proper way. But I think it's even stranger how the MCU tried to erase that completely. When the two meet again in Avengers Infinity War, sure, a few years have passed for Black Widow, but you have to realize that it's really only been like a few weeks or months for Banner. When he turned into the Hulk and flew away at the end of Age of Ultron, he stayed that way and had no recollection of anything until he turned back into Bruce, thanks to Thor. So there's probably still some unresolved feelings on his side. Will we ever get a resolution to this relationship? Probably not now, but it's a storyline that I wish they didn't drop. Now, we got glimpses of the horrific practices of the Red Room in Avengers Age of Ultron and other accompanying shows like Agent Carter, but we still don't know the full extent of how they trained and treated Natasha. Yes, we know it's bad, but it would still be great to see the Black Widow movie further explore the Red Room's practices and how it's ultimately run for so many years. And given everything we've seen so far in the trailers, this is one question that I'm pretty sure we're getting an answer to. Okay, this one's a bit more of a nitpicky question, but will she get a funeral? Look, I get it. Tony Stark was front and center in that battlefield, and he was the one who ultimately sacrificed himself to stop Thanos once and for all. Plus, he was the face of the MCU since its inception, so he deserved the special highlight. But didn't you find it strange that the whole world put on this big, extravagant funeral attended by all the heroes to celebrate Tony Stark's sacrifice, and Black Widow got nothing? She sacrificed herself in a very similar way, and the directors have said she didn't get a funeral scene because her solo movie was coming out, so it wasn't really a goodbye to the character, which I guess makes sense, but still, it's a little weird. There were rumblings that the Black Widow movie would address the character's funeral and have someone like Hawkeye deliver a eulogy, but that still remains unconfirmed. I guess we'll just have to wait and see for that. Okay, this might be the biggest question that we have about Black Widow. What exactly happens after you die sacrificing yourself for the Soul Stone? As I mentioned before, there seems to be some iffy spiritual magic that occurs on Vormir, so who's to say that Natasha is dead and gone forever? Here's a wild idea. What if the Black Widow movie we're seeing isn't just your standard prequel, but rather it's Black Widow's soul reliving her past to ultimately change her future in an alternate timeline? Yeah, I know that's a crazy idea, but with the multiverse on its way in the MCU, I would never count anything out. And at the end of the day, it would give us an opportunity to keep Black Widow around. She's a fan favorite character for a reason, and further exploring the ramifications of that big cliff dive on Vormir could present a way for her to stick around the MCU for the foreseeable future. Okay, fine, maybe that's just wishful thinking. I just miss Black Widow, okay?
If you're about to tell me to look on the bright side, I'm about to hit you in the head with a peanut butter sandwich.
Honestly, should I even be calling her Black Widow anymore? All signs seem to point to Yelena Belova taking up the Black Widow mantle after the events of Endgame, which will be explained in the Black Widow movie, unless of course Natasha is able to beat death somehow and return. You just never know with the MCU.